What's up, everyone? So today we're working on the Jeep again. We're going to take a look at bolt-on skid plates versus weld-on skid plates, specifically for your lower control arms. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here we are. We're underneath my 2006 Jeep TJ, and here are the skid plates. Now these ones I went with are by Skid Row. First thing I don't like about these is how these poke out. Now, I have hit them once or twice, but I've got hung up on them less than I thought I would. So they're really not an issue, but I don't like how the bolts hang out there. Second issue. So the second issue that you see is how deformed this is. This skid plate is actually supposed to be down here, like this, for travel. There's probably less than 1/8 of an inch in between this skid plate and my control arm, to the point that when I'm driving, this is actually my control arm is actually flexing into this mount. So that's no good. Basically, the way this mounts is it's just not strong enough to put the weight of a vehicle on. I haven't hit these that hard. You can see there's some grind marks and stuff on them, but I haven't hit them hard enough in my mind to really create this much damage. I know of many people with Jeeps who run just weld-on mounts, and have never had a weld-on mount bend. Not to this degree anyway. So the other issue that they make, the last one, and I did not realize this until after I put them on, is you lose a lot of real estate on your axle housing. And what I mean is to place jack stands. Notice how I have the jack stand here and one back there, because my jack is here, because I can't place a jack stand there because you have this really wide piece of metal from here to here, and you can't put a jack stand there. So when you're jacking up, there's no place where you put a jack stand over there unless you put it on this piece. And because mine are bent and deformed, I don't feel comfortable putting it on that because it's not a flat surface. It's not a stable surface for the jack stand to be. So I have to do this setup. Now, it's safe enough for me to work under, but I'd much rather have a jack stand on both sides of the axles. So let's go ahead and pull these old mounts off and examine them just a little bit further and show you how deformed they are. And then I'll show you the weld-on ones that we got and how much cheaper they are. Okay, so here's what we got. This is from the passenger side. I would say this is the most bent up, but all of this, and plus a few more parts, gets replaced with just this. Now, it's thicker and stronger because the way it attaches, right? So where this piece is, just that goes there. And it makes a fully boxed control arm, which makes your control arm stronger, but then you don't have all of this hanging down. Just look at that massive piece. I mean, you hardly ever hit a rock up here where this piece is. It's usually all down here on your control arm, and you're not really protecting the control arm because aftermarket control arms are pretty strong. More what you're worried about is the mount. And I mean, I can tell you that I've not hit this very hard. I've put my Jeep on it once or twice, but you know, maybe rubbed a rock against it, but I've not been rock bashing. And you can see that there is a crack developing right here. You can see how just tweaked this thing is. I mean, it used to be, for reference, this used to be straight out here, and it's bent down this way. You can see how twisted it is right here. It's way deformed. It's spun around, that bolt that holds your control arm. It's just not good. I think that this design, while it's nice for people who can't weld, I think this design has some major flaws because if you hit this hard enough, you could actually tweak your bracket that holds your control arm. Since you're using a bolt from the control arm to hold this side and not this side, it's just there's not enough support on this outer piece. I mean, this piece out here is just dangling out here, and you could see even this piece that has support was twisted backwards along the axis of that bolt. So for that reason, I don't think you should buy these. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at it, let's go ahead and get this one welded on. I've already cleaned up the metal and everything. You'll want to put these on before your control arms come in contact with rocks and kind of start folding. You can bend them back straight and get them close, but it's easier to do if the control arm mounts are clean. If they're not clean and they're pretty tweaked up, I'd say just get new lower control arms with skids already built in place. But if your control arms are pretty clean, get these. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so there's the finished product. I think they look great. They definitely give you a lot more clearance. They're a lot less ugly and noticeable. They look more like something that would come with the Jeep versus some big old bolted on control arm, skid plate, some big old hunky chunk of metal hanging down there. You're able to weld them on the inside and the outside because that slot is big enough to get a gun in there, so that works good. One thing to note, the control arms, to get them in, because you have this pocket now, you kind of got to slide one side in and then push the control arm up and then slide them back to get them in there. You can't really just pop them down from the bottom. And I'll show you here. This is why you can't really pop them down from the bottom, because you have this piece of steel right here. I guess you could go and cut a chunk out right here so that you could do that, but there's enough room in here to take the control arm and slide it this way, so you can pop your joint up on this side and then slide it back. So that's not an issue. I guess you could go in, it's this little nub right here, so if you cut this little nub out, then your control arms would slip in and out just fine. But anyway guys, if you're interested in the bolt-on control arms, they are pretty good. I have to give them for what they're for. They did protect my lower control arm mounts. They did do their job. They're just not strong enough for what I need. I don't go rock bashing, but for someone who more of does easier trails, I would say, and just needs the extra protection there just in case they bump into it, or maybe for an overlander or something like that, someone who doesn't necessarily have the welding skills or doesn't want to weld them on, it's a good option. They are pretty strong. They've been on there for 2 years. That's 2 years of pretty hard trails, so they're not too bad. However, you know, if you have the means, go with the Weld-ons. They're going to be so much better and just stronger. But what I'll do is I'll leave a link to both down below so you guys can check them out. The skid row ones are quite a bit more expensive than the Weld-on type. The Weld-on type, like I said, I think they're 30 to 40 bucks, and then the other cost is just welding it on. So I can't imagine to be that expensive for someone to weld it on. Whereas the skid row ones, they're pretty expensive, and you have very special instructions to install them because they use a U-bolt, and the torque and everything on them is very specific. Not hard to install. They just take a little bit of time, just like the welding ones. So anyway guys, if you have any questions, hit the comments below. Let's start up a conversation. I really like when we talk about things, or you guys tell me how I did something wrong. That works too. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you like what's going on with the channel, hit subscribe. Thank you and have a good night.